Hi dear students, how are you? I hope you're fine. Today we're gonna talk about the classical conditioning. We will complete the classical conditioning, of course. We talked about this before. Classical conditioning, it's a form of learning. So we are talking here about the learning, how to learn, how to teach people here or any organism learn to associate with the two stimuli together that occur in sequence. I'm talking here about a type which is called classical one. Classical conditioning occurs when a person forms a mental association between two stimuli, so that encountering one stimulus means that the person thinks of the other stimulus. When we talk about condition to make people or animals act or react in a particular way by gradually getting them used to a specific pattern of events, what I'm talking here about, I'm giving you here like the example of the experiment of the Pavlov's dog experiment that we here associated. Remember, when we associated here the unconditioned stimulus with the conditioned stimulus, remember that? Yes, this happened when we discovered by Ivan Pavlov in 1900s. We had here neutral stimulus. What does it mean, neutral stimulus? Stimulus that before conditioning, automatic stimulus, has no effect on the desired response. Of course, like the bell. I'm ringing the bell. My favorite dog, my favorite pet. I'm just ringing the bell. Okay, do you think that the dog will salivate? No, it will not. Unconditioned stimulus, a stimulus that brings about a response without having been learned. So, if I'm giving here I'm giving my dog, or I'm showing my dog the meat or the food, any kind of food, so my dog will salivate, of course, for the food. Unconditioned response, a response that's naturally and needs to no training, so the response of the salivation. Conditioned stimulus, what does it mean? Conditioned, this is a learned one. Once a neutral stimulus that has been paired, and this is very important word, pairing with an unconditioned stimulus to bring about a response, formerly caused only by the unconditioned stimulus. Here I'm ringing the bell whenever I put the food for my dog. Conditioned response, so the response that after conditioning follows a previously neutral stimulus, so my little dog will do what? Will salivate. Okay, as we saw together this before. Let's see this one. We are talking here about the elements of the experiment. I have unconditioned stimulus, right? The natural stimulus, which is the food, of course. Automatic stimulus here, natural one. Unconditioned here means automatic, not learned. Remember that. Like the natural response of salivation. Conditioned stimulus, this is the learned one. So the artificial one, first of all, unconditioned stimulus here natural, while the conditioned stimulus here artificial, like ringing the bell, bim bim bim, it's a substitute to a natural stimulus. Conditioned response, so this is the response of the conditioned stimulus. Okay, let's complete. I'm having here the similar experiment by Watson. He took Watson. What did he do when he took the infant Albert? And we saw the video together more than one time. He was happy, was playing with the rabbit, and he was very happy and pleasant. Then he created a loud noise to frighten the boy. As soon as the baby touched the rabbit, and this frightened the little Albert. He repeated it for a number of times. What happened? Slowly the baby feared the rabbit. He was learned that to fear of the rabbit and never came near it again. So I'm having some here classical conditioning principles. For what are the principles for the classical conditioning process? We are having the acquisition phase. It's the initial learning of the conditioned response. So, for example, the dog learning to salivate at the sound of the bell. So this is the acquisition. I'm doing here association of two here stimuli together. What about the extinction? Extinction, guys, is used to describe what? The elimination of the conditioned response. So I'm trying to get rid of this or eliminate the conditioned response. What does it mean? Here, for example, I'm talking about the dog. It was learned here, the dog, to salivate at the sound of a bell, and this is a very bad thing, right? And I want to make what to train my dog, or the experiment want to train my dog, or gradually here extinguish the dog's response, to eliminate this response or this false response by repeatedly here ringing the bell without the presenting food afterward. So my dog will do what? He will get rid of this salivation or this habit. After extinction, the experimenter lets a few hours pass and then rings the bell again. The dog will usually salivate at the sound of the bell once again, but after repeating and repeating, the reappearance of the extinguished here response after some time has passed is called spontaneous recovery. If a child is bitten by a large black dog, oh my God, the child may fear not only that dog, but other large dogs, of course. This phenomena is called what? Generalization, right? Less similar stimuli will usually produce less generalization. For example, the child may show little fear of smaller dogs, maybe, but the large black dog, he will definitely be afraid of them. Here I'm having what? Discrimination. What does it mean, discrimination? Let's see together and understand this together. The opposite of generalization. So generalization, discrimination is the opposite of discrimination. Okay, guys, in which an individual learns to produce a conditioned response to one stimulus but not to another stimulus that is similar. Can you give us an example? We don't understand, I know. For example, a child may show a fear of what response? A fear response to freely roaming dogs, of course. I am afraid of the freely roaming dogs. But may show no fear when a dog is on a leash or confined to a pen, of course. This is logic. So, classical conditioning explains here some cases of phobias, which are irrational or excessive fears of two specific objects or situations. So classical conditioning here explains many emotional responses such as happiness, excitement, anger, and anxiety that people have to specific stimuli. Classical conditioning procedures are used to treat phobias. So this is important to study the classical conditioning, of course, because here it has a very big role or important role to here treat phobias and other unwanted behaviors such as alcoholism and addictions. So to treat phobias of specific objects, the therapist here gradually and repeatedly presents the feared object to the patient while the patient relaxes. Through extinction, the patient loses his or her fear of the object. In one treatment for alcoholism, patients drink an alcoholic beverage and then ingest a drug that produces nausea. Eventually, they feel nauseous at the sight or smell of alcohol and stop drinking it. So, because they don't like to feel this feeling, so they do what? They do hate this kind of alcohol because they don't want to get nosy, right? So, what about the operant or instrumental conditioning? Let's talk about here operant and instrumental conditioning. It's a type of learning also, in which voluntary behavior is strengthened if it is reinforced and weakened if it's punished. What you're talking about? I'm talking here about what? I'm talking here about something called operant here conditioning. It's referring here to the fact that learners must operate or perform a certain behavior before receiving a reward or punishment. If you do your homework, I will give you this cookie. So I'm here promising to give you something for your good behavior. But Americans here, psychologists, became here B.F. Skinner became one of the most famous psychologists in history for his pioneering research on operant here conditioning. In fact, he coined the term operant conditioning. So, can you see this? So I'm having here an experiment with this mouse, and I will send you the video of this experiment. As you see, whenever this little mouse press the button, we have here what signal lights. Let's see together. I'm having here B.F. Skinner experiments. He designed a special puzzle box. This puzzle box was for the rat or the mouse. It had level that when pressed provide a cup water food. Each time the lever is pressed, a sound also was created. So whenever the rat here pressed the button, what happens? A sound was created and he was given water or food. He put a hungry, thirst rat in the cage. Oh my God. At regular interval, he used to press the lever and feed the rat. After several times later, the rat started doing it by himself or by itself. Whenever it felt hungry, thirsty, he pressed the button. The sound associated with it and food water acted as the positive reinforcement, of course. So, reinforcement here refers to any process that strengthens a particular behavior that increases the chances that the behavior will occur again. So I'm here reinforcement. We have positive and negative. What about the positive reinforcement? A method. It's just a method of strengthening behavior by following it with a pleasant stimulus. It's a positive stimulus, pleasant one. What about the negative reinforcement? Negative reinforcement is a method of strengthening also behavior by following it with the removal or omission of an unpleasant stimulus. So this is for what? For getting rid or removing the unpleasant stimulus. So I'm having here something called punishment. Punishment weakens a behavior, reducing the chances that the behavior will occur again. We know positive involves reducing the behavior by delivering an unpleasant stimulus if the behavior occurs. So I'm having here positive involves reducing behavior, delivering an unpleasant stimulus if the behavior occurs. And I'm having here negative also. I'm having here negative involves what? Reducing this behavior by removing pleasant stimulus. I'm here taking the pleasant stimulus from you if the behavior occurs. Shaping. What about shaping? Is a reinforcement. This is a reinforcement technique to do what? That's used to teach animals or people even behaviors that they have never performed before. How in this method the teacher begins by reinforcing a response the learner can perform easily and then gradually requires more and more difficult responses. Let's have an example to understand this. For example, to teach a rat or to press a lever that's over its head, the trainer can first reward any upward head movement, then an upward movement of at least 1 inch, then 2 inches, and so on until the rat reaches the lever. What about here the extinction? We said the elimination of a learned behavior by discontinuing the reinforcer of that behavior. A behavior learned is not always permanent. This is very important point. Whenever you learn a behavior, it can be eliminated, it can be cancelled. So if a rat has learned to press a lever because it receives food for doing so, its lever pressing will decrease and eventually disappear if food is no longer delivered. So if the rat keeps here pressing and pressing and no food was presented, so the rat will stop doing so. Generalization and discrimination occur when here in operant conditioning in much the same way that they do in classical conditioning. So in generalization, we do what people perform a behavior learned in one situation in another similar situations. For example, a man who is rewarded with laughter when he tells certain jokes at a bar may tell the same jokes at restaurants, parties, or wedding receptions. Of course, we're not going to bars, and this is an ethical thing that we shouldn't do. Maybe it happens in the USA or something like this, but here we don't do that. Discrimination is learning that a behavior will be reinforced in one situation but not in another. So the man may learn that telling his jokes in church or at a serious business meeting or in the mosques so will not make people laugh, of course. So, application of operant conditioning. I'm having here for parents, for teachers, behavior therapists use shaping techniques to teach basic here job skills to adults with mental retardation. Therapists here use also the reinforcement techniques to teach self-care skills to people with severe mental illness, such as we know schizophrenia, and use punishment and extinction to reduce aggressive and antisocial behaviors by these individuals, to treat here stuttering, marital problems, also drug addictions, impulsive spending, eating disorders, and many other behavior problems. So I hope you understood this. If you have any question, please send me on the SCL or at school. Thank you, my dear students.